Hey, how's it going? Today, I'm going to take a couple minutes to cover a couple subjects. One is, I'm going to do a bit of a story and reveal on my new griz gun. And first of all, I got to tell you, this has got to be one of the biggest roller coasters I ever went through. It seems anyway. And as usual, I'm going to keep myself some bullet points here to keep me in check. So roughly a little more than a year ago, I'd made up my mind that I was going to get me a new griz gun to replace my old one. Sold it a while back. Long story, but about a little over a year ago, I made up my mind I was going to do a two-gun setup. One for offense, a rifle, and the second, of course, would be a handgun. And what got me started on the rifle part of it was a couple of boys out of Washington State, I believe it is, go by the name and channel of TII Armory, is turning 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum researches into what they call the 500 Bushwhacker. Now, admittedly, I didn't have any desire chamber out a 500 Smith & Wesson to the 500 Bushwhacker, but I really wanted to build a rifle in it. One that would fit on my action that has many other barrels with it. You know some of them. But this one, in a two-gun situation, would be perfect because, one, I could get that 500ths of an inch bullet diameter, which would be the exact same as a 500 JRH. And specifically, the reason I didn't want the 500 Bushwhacker and the revolver is even with the 7.5 inch and the way that thing performs and recoils, they don't want to put that action together without their muzzle brake, which their muzzle brake resembles the same thing as what would be on an Abrams tank. And even at 5.5 or 7.5 inches, you add that extra big old muzzle brake at the end of it, and it's just impractical. I knew I'd never carry it that way. But in a rifle, 22-inch barrel rifle, I was all for that. And as a matchup, I was going to go, like I said, the 500 JRH. Well, lo and behold, I won the bid on a 500 Smith & Wesson New England Firearms barrel. Got it paid for, it shipped, and for whatever reason, the tracking said it left Boise, Idaho, and to this day, never has arrived. And caused a lot of controversy between me and the seller, but that's neither here nor there. But ever since then, I've been trying to acquire another 500 Smith & Wesson barrel. And every one of them went way beyond what I thought I should be paying for a barrel. And then even tried to obtain even an entire rifle if I had to. But even that, for some reason, that 500 Smith & Wesson combination of action and barrel was going for prices that just didn't make sense. And recently, I had kind of just given up on the idea of the rifle barrel. It just doesn't make sense right now for me to buy that much. Well, I still didn't get off the 500 JRH thing. And then recently, a certain Alabama ghost got a 500 JRH, and we communicated a little bit, not a lot, through YouTube. And a part of me, after he got that, went, well, what if I go the 500 line ball? And the reason I was thinking that, or at least the reason I was telling myself that, was I thought, well, that'd be interesting. The line ball does have a little bit higher pressure rating, 510 instead of 500. So we could actually kind of compare notes. But then, as I was going through and thumbing that, there was a certain part of me that started asking myself, well, am I doing that just to see if I can prove that I can piss bigger? Or is it something I really desired to have? Because the JRH thing was something that was on my agenda for so long. Didn't make sense to sidetrack that for something that would be more expensive to come along. Well, then a certain few things started to happen in the world. One of them happened to be a conviction of a certain somebody in New York, and actually the way the economy was going, which got me reconsidering my priorities. Now, originally I made mention that I wanted to find me a 500 JRH, X amount of dollars, have to buy dies, have to buy bullets, have to buy potentially brass, all that kind of good stuff. And when it's all said and done, that's kind of expensive. And then when it comes to the ends, I also wanted a Ruger Blackhawk 5.5-inch barrel that was 45 Colt Bisley. Again, you're at, not that I needed brass or bullets or anything for that, but again, adding another price of a gun. So in other words, I'm going, and I want, and I want, and I want. And then to top it all off, I want to do a 10mm semi-auto, or was wanting to go for a 10mm anyway. And that's another and. So I just really just got down and started contemplating what I really wanted and whether it made sense. And then I started floating through and noticed that the 480 Ruger Redhawks was going rather reasonably. And I decided that maybe I'd look at that in 480 Ruger. Because after all, I'm not trying to outdo anybody by doing it. As a matter of fact, the person in question's already done it. No big deal. It is what it is. But then I started looking at the practicality of that even. And looking at the cost of the gun as opposed to the cost of the dies and bullet molds and brass and all that kind of stuff, I decided, well, that even with that, it doesn't add up to making really a whole lot of sense for me. And then cartridge came in my head that would stop some of the ends. At this point, I could not justify a 45 Colt Ruger Bisley and a griz gun, because technically I can get by. If I get a 45 Colt 5.5-inch Bisley, the chances of me getting back home, well, that's questionable, because I'm not made of money, and I still have another year till graduation before my kid graduates from school, and I'm going to be opened up to that possibility of going home. And I thought, I'm going to stay with the Ruger Bisley. Well, then I started looking at the price tags at what they wanted for that even, and I started looking at more options. Ruger Bisley, the Ruger Redhawk, which I'm very familiar with. I've used it in my past. Probably the worst mistake I ever made. I've said that before, that I sold that Ruger Redhawk. And the price tags just kept, every time I thought I had one, price tags would go beyond what I could afford. And then, of all things, I had one, and I saved up enough money. As a matter of fact, I even sold a few of my Remingtons. I went from 10 Remingtons down to 6 to help cover the extra price for a Ruger Bisley in 454 Casull. Felt that I was kind of justified in that. It's a good round. I've used it before. It wasn't my personal one, but I have used it before. But there was a few things that, again, for whatever reason, I had one marked that I figured I could afford, but I made the mistake of noticing that nobody was bidding on it. So I waited till the last minute, put the minimum bid on it, and sure enough, somebody outbid me. Well, by that time, it was too late to do the buy now price, and that thing went for another $300 over top of that buy now price, and I let it go. And then I just started this thing where I was just kept searching that cartridge. And one thing I knew for sure that were no-nos for me. I did not want a Rhino looking gun. And what I mean by that is I didn't want to get the Taurus with the rail all the way down the barrel. That Picatinny rail on top of a gun just looked like crap to me. I wanted something smooth. Bent ribs okay, but smooth. The other no-no for me was the Ruger Alaskan. Now, this may sound weird because as far as bear defense, I've already said bear defense for me is between short distance. However, in my experience, your griz gun or bear defense gun is also a utility revolver. It gets used for more things than just that. It isn't only going to pull the trigger on it for that. And I don't shoot snub nose well. And I know somebody's going to go, he said snub nose are inaccurate. We both know that's bull. There is a certain amount of me that likes a little bit of barrel length for velocity, but even that is not no more than 15% of the reason why I didn't want that short barrel. I do not shoot snub nose well. There are guys that shoot them with no issues. I'm not one of them. I've always been a rifle guy, muzzleloader guy, and even in the archery, keep sights and a sight clear out here is a lot different than trying to sight here. Got any bad habits for any kind of distance, it shows on a snub nose. That's a personal flaw. There was a part of me that kind of looked at the Tucolac a little bit, but even that, price tags, for some reason you put the Tucolac on it and price tags just went crazy. Well, as I told you, I had missed out on that Bisley and did a search one more time for 454 Casull revolver, open-ended, when a new one popped up at a price tag that if I had done the same thing, I'd have got it $100 cheaper, but based on what it was, I decided to reach out to the guy because, one, he had something like a 5-day limit and money orders. If it didn't show up within 5 days, that he was going to consider you a non-payer. And quite frankly, I've had it take 2.5 weeks for my rent check just to get across town sometimes. So I reached out to him. He said, yeah, I understand. As long as we communicate, we'll be just fine. And I've had this now for about a week. And it showed up with this holster. Now, not knowing what the holster was, that wasn't part of the, excuse me, I'm gonna have to do this, but not knowing what the holster was, It wasn't part of the description. I really didn't care about the holster. But I've always pronounced this as Bianchi, and that could be the improper pronunciation. Cyclone Ruger Red Hawk 7.5-inch revolver. That's what this meant to fit. Now, that holster may come in handy, but it ain't the holster I was after anyway. And so today I'm going to show you my new griz gun. And here we have Magnum Research's BFR and 454 Casull. Now, like the Alabama Ghost, I'm not sure I'm going to like this grip. It is the rubber grip. Who knows? Maybe I'll fall in love with it. But I may determine to find a custom grip to fit this. It's a 6.5-inch barrel, which means I could have made a mistake, because when I was talking to that Alabama Ghost, he had informed me that if I got the 500 JRH, that I might want to go a 6.5-inch holster instead of the 5.5-inch. Well, lo and behold, I get a 6.5-inch holster or barrel, and I've already ordered the 6.5-inch holster. So have I made a mistake? Well, you're about to find out with me, because I haven't tried this. I've been holding off to do this on video, and I have not made a mistake. Even at 6.5 inches, I got a good solid inch right there. So here we go. Now, the reason this is practical is I already have 8 different of my own bullets I've designed, mostly for Captain Ball, but when I designed them so that I could still size them and use them as regular bullets. So 4 of those run from 240 to 270 grains. You've seen some of the pictures of them. And I have the 300 grain Lee bullet mold. And this gives me a great start. I already have dies that I have purchased, and trimmer and all that good stuff for the 45-55 Walker project. So I have 200 rounds of cases, 100 of them 100 a day, 100 of them the Starline brass, already bought, that I can trim down to 454 Casull length already. So technically, powder, primers, bullets, cases, I have enough to get started with this alone. But again, this will take the place right here. This one's a 8-inch one, and this is the 6.5-inch one, and I got that more than fits. I got lucky. I was kind of nervous that I'd have a barrel sticking out here a bit, and I didn't want that. And we can see that's not happening. I got that set up, ready to go there. All I got to do is change out 3 Chicago screws and then snap it on here, and we're good to go with that. I don't know about you, but I'm excited. Now, I also want to take the second subject and talk about, real quick, I know this video is going to go long again. It seems like that's all I do anymore is long videos, but, well, okay, I made the statement more than once that until you lived it, you don't know what you're going to do. And I still stand by that, meaning I've been within 25 yards, give or take, from griz several times. At no point has any griz ever turned on me and even gave me a bluff. So I can tell you that I include myself in this scenario, that I don't know until I know. You don't know. A lot of people like to brag, oh, if it was me, I'd be doing this. Well, that's not that's great that you say it, but how often does what you say turn out to be reality? So with that, I'm saying that until you're in that point, you don't know how you're going to take. And I made reference to Steve Ranella and what happened with him, where his body just shut down. He became a possum. He survived it. His friend somehow thwarted the bear with a trekking stick. It is what it is. That's the story told by multiple people from that particular situation, because he's always got a camera crew besides the buddy that was with him. But I wanted to talk about, in that scenario, July 13th at roughly 6:12 p.m., a group of people proved their sand to stand against the grizzly. Because originally, when I was talking about my experience with grizzly, I was trying to do a metaphor for the deep blue swamp coming at us. I thought that was a way to try to communicate without being a 71-year-old being no knock at the front door. But in that day, an entire group of people proved their sand to stand up against that griz. And in the center of them was one man that I've had admiration for many different reasons, but the number one reason I had admiration for him, and I don't speak for anybody but me, was he was the one person that walked into that office, refused to take a salary, and doing so has sacrificed and lost his wealth. Anybody else that's ever walked into that has come out smelling like a rose and richer than when they walked in. And for me, that is the biggest thing, admiration I have for that guy. But of those griz, and I'm talking more people that faced that griz that day, didn't run, didn't hide, didn't panic, and in the center of this one fellow with sand stood up in the middle of it and pretty much said, "Take this, try it, you missed." And for that, I believe that he's got the sand. So, if you came here wearing your feelings on your sleeve, looking to get your butt hurt, you may have came to the right place. Oh, by the way, if I got smarts enough to edit it in, I told you I'd seen a big blackie. There's a few black bear that show up, and I'll tell maybe more of that story later. But since that, seeing that black bear, I put out 4 trail cams over a 5-mile stretch, and each week when I go to check my cameras, I have at least 2 pictures of bear per week across those 4 cameras. And I think I'll leave a few of those at the end of this for you to take a look at.